In this unit of our InDesign CS6 course, we're going to talk about the Notes layout, the Track Changes layout, and the Story Editor display layout underneath our Preferences dialog box. Let's begin with the Notes layout first. Adobe InDesign CS6 allows you to place notes, kind of an overlay of your InDesign document, using this Notes tool over here in the Tools panel. The options that we have available for us is, first of all, selecting a color for our user. You'll notice, just as we have in other options, we've got all types of colors that we can choose. We'll use the default user color of a bright orange for that. Beneath that, we have a series of checkboxes. One of them is to show note tooltips. So for example, if I go over here and I work with the note tool, I got a little bit of a flash there because the Preferences dialog box is going to override all other options when it's open. But when I clicked on the button, it actually allowed me to select that note tool and show the tooltips. If I want to, I can turn that off. And with notes that we can apply in Story Editor, we can include note content when checking spelling, so it'll check my corrections when I spell check, so I don't tell somebody to change a word to an incorrect spelling. And we also have the ability to include note content with fine change operations. So if I want to change something globally when I'm working with the text in the Story Editor, I can also do that for any of the notes that I have with that. And I have another one of those color boxes right here. You've seen enough of that, so we won't bother with that for the rest of this unit of our InDesign course. We already know, if you hit it, like I say, right up here, we're chock full of colors when we're working with these settings in the Preferences dialog box. Let's go to the next layout and click on Track Changes. InDesign can work with a dedicated copy management tool that's known as InCopy. And there is the ability, as you're doing that work, to very quickly move content out to an editorial staff if you're working with a publication or a technical publishing unit, and then move that copy back directly back and forth between InDesign documents. But whether you do it like that or you're working with changes that are built within InDesign CS6 itself, you have the ability to track changes that are made to the document from previous versions where you've brought that out. So for example, it could show where text has been added since the document was last saved in a version, or deleted, or that text is moved. We can also prevent duplicate user colors. So if this has to go to review throughout an organization, everybody has to pick their own user color, and you can tell when you're looking at the InDesign document, and whatever the notes or changes have been made, the color will correspond with that person. Change bars option. This basically deals with that view for tracking our changes that we'll set up, and what it'll do is it'll give us a color for where that shows in those changes and where the location is for the left side margin, either when we're looking in the layout view or, more importantly, generally when we're working with that with the Story Editor display. And it'll also include deleted text when spell checking. So in this case, if there's something that was deleted, okay, and we want to bring it back, it'll take that and allow us to bring that back if we go backwards on that change with the correct spelling for it. Let's go to the last layout we're going to talk about in this unit of our InDesign CS6 course, and we're going to click on the Story Editor display layout. This has a number of options for the Story Editor, which is an executive word processor that's actually built inside InDesign CS6. What it does is it allows us to edit copy independently of editing it inside of an InDesign document layout file. So we're simply working with the text. We're not working with any of the arrangement of that text on your InDesign document page. We have options as we do that to select the fonts that we'd be working with, line spacing and text color and background, so we can see how that works specifically with that type. And we've got a little pictogram over here. So for example, if I take the text color and I change that to yellow, and I change that background from white to black, what we can do is we can see that text look like this when we're working with our story editor. We're going to change that back to our default settings too. First, bring the background to white, and then take the text color and bring that back to black and go back to our default settings. Now, if we don't want to set individual colors for that text and background, we have some themes that are defined. So I could say, for example, this is what it would look like if I was working with an amber monochrome monitor in the late 1980s. Actually, just like the example I showed you just a little bit ago. Or if I want to see it in a terminal view, where it turns that text to green. Once again, we'll go for the default, which was the ink on paper. Enable anti-aliasing basically talks about how the edges of the type characters you're working with are formed when you're working in the story editor. Enable anti-aliasing reduces the chance that little jaggies are going to show up when you're dealing with diagonal lines or you're dealing with rounded edges of your characters. Beneath that we have cursor options, and this basically allows me to see, again, just in the story editor display, not when you're working with your layouts. It allows me to see when I'm working with the cursor various options that I could choose for working with it, and I can also set the option for whether that cursor is going to blink or not, depending on my preferences when I'm working in the story editor and how it displays.